Hello and welcome to Crown Lane on the Record. This is Lawrence. During the recording of this episode, I completely and utterly forgot to tell you about the event that ties in. Normally we'd have a workshop based on whatever the episode's about. However, this time our event is the Crown Lane birthday party. We turn 17 years old and we're having a nice big birthday party on the 14th of September. You are invited. There is a link below to buy tickets. See you then. Enjoy the episode. Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the Crown Lane podcast, Crown Lane on the Record, episode number 5. Today we're going to be talking about all things sustainability. My name's Lawrence Bradshaw. Next to me I have
John Merriman.
John Merriman. How are you doing, John?
I'm doing great.
John, this is our September edition. How was your holiday in Zimbabwe?
Oh, it was amazing. This is like when they film those things where they do the live music slot and they've already pre-recorded it and then they have to pretend they're going to go and perform.
What was the funniest thing that happened in Zimbabwe?
Jeepers, getting back was a nightmare. I'm amazed I made it for this podcast.
And the best thing you ate?
I can't do this.
Okay, so we may be recording this one 3 weeks in advance because John is going to Zimbabwe.
Can't wait.
That's how I woke up this morning. This is how sad life can be for me sometimes. I woke up this morning thinking, how shall I introduce the podcast? And I thought, let's put him on the spot with some Zimbabwe questions.
Brilliant.
We'll see how it went. We'll see how your journey back was.
Absolutely.
In September.
We'll put on the YouTube version of this, we'll put some photos up.
Perfect. Yeah,
nice.
Lovely. Okay, well, welcome everybody. Today we're talking about sustainability within the music industry, also within Crown Lane, how we do things. Big topic, always big topics at Crown Lane. So, John, I thought you might be able to kick us off talking about your knowledge of what sustainability looks like within the music industry, big or small.
Well, I got into sustainability as a kind of ethos outside of the studio. That was where it was first important to me in my life. So a lot of things to do with how I live are kind of geared towards that. And in a simple mantra I often have when I'm buying something is, if I had to get rid of this when it's at the end of its useful life, would it go in my back garden? And would I have to dig a hole? Would it be a big hole? Is there stuff I can reuse on it? Is the thing able to be sold afterwards, i.e. it wouldn't end up in my back garden? Or is it all just made of stuff that is going to be junk in a very short space of time? And that kind of mantra has been with me for many years as to what I purchase and how I live my life. So that's kind of been outside of, it sounds a bit pious, but that's been my journey outside.
No?
And I've had some fun with it as well. We did 2017, I dived in on when Facebook was more of a thing. We dived in and I challenged 20 guys to go plastic free in the bathroom. So that
in your bathroom?
Yeah, so it was busy.
Yeah.
But we did it just for 1 month. Can I challenge 20 people to all give up using plastic products in the bathroom? So that would be the containers that things come in, so you have to shop very differently. And it was possible, and it took a little while for people to sort of go, yeah, I'm up for doing that. But the challenge then meant that 20 people changed a few of the patterns in their life.
I'm going to butt in there, John, because, again, without seeming pious, it's always meant something to me, sustainability, from quite a young age. And this is evidenced, my mum can back me up on this one, that every Christmas, from the age of about 7, I refused to use wrapping paper because I've always hated it. I don't want to sound like I'm on my high horse, but what I would do is use old newspaper, try not to use the sun, but I'd wrap it up in newspaper, which then gave away who the present was from on Christmas morning. All these
So
beautiful decorated presents, and then some whole bit of the Telegraph was wrapped up and everyone would know it was from me. But it's always kind of been on my mind. I can't say that I'm the best at it. It's been really eye-opening coming to Crown Lane and seeing your methods within what we do. We'll talk about more of that in the second half. But yeah, going back to the industry of music.
Yeah, so that kind of spilt into the studio here, and I was really challenged by one of the councillors at Merton Council, actually, who came over and said, did I want to come to an event at when Sadiq Khan it's when Boris Johnson was mayor. They did an event for Greening London, and they invited lots of small businesses there, and that was really inspiring to see other people and what they did, and everyone had to come up and speak. And I remember one person's job was on the set of EastEnders to do product placement of sustainable products, and so they were in all the BBC programmes, mainly things like EastEnders, that they could then go, let's not use one of those single-use plastics. Let's make sure. So it's subliminal, kind of trying to get messaging across. And it was amazing to meet someone like that and just have a coffee with them and be like, wow, I hadn't considered that was even a journey that, in terms of positive manipulation of people, making sure that the message of green being a better option is through loads of different routes. And so that was where it kind of started. That was probably 15 years ago now. And then here it was quite a long journey, which we'll come on to. But the music industry as a whole is one that struggles with the area of sustainability. And it is, by very nature, if you think of tour, taking a band on tour, for example, an incredibly unsustainable thing to do. And there are some amazing organisations that I'm sure we'll come on to during this podcast that are working to challenge that and to make touring more sustainable.
Yeah, because if we think about our last episode with your quartiles, with the 4 different elements of music, hang on, let's test myself, composition, and then recording, and then live performance and merchandise and branding. That touring side of it, talking about bigger artists, has got to be the biggest polluter, basically, the biggest issue to try and overcome with sustainability. And it would be difficult to do this podcast without talking about the Coldplay in the room, only because they're probably setting the biggest and best example of it. I went to see the Music of the Spheres tour last year. Against my will, I ended up doing that thing of being like, Coldplay, as most people do. And I went along to it without wanting to go. I took one of my friends who wanted to go and watch. And then by the first song, I was like, wow, this is really good. And which I tried to say not too loudly. However, I've just said it on our podcast. But one of the things that really struck me was their sustainability, the action that they take. And one of the things that I've looked into, which is the company they've gone with, which is Energy Floors, which is where they have you may know about this already, the kinetic dance floors. So it's these big circular raised floors where they ask people to go and dance and jump on them. And then throughout their evening, they say that provides enough energy to provide the lighting for the show. But what's quite nice is they have a kilojoule counter at the side of the stage, so you can actually see your progress in real time.
That's amazing.
It's really, really, really brilliant. You do have to see the other side of it, which is it's a step in the right direction. This company, they do Energy Floors. They do these kinetic dance floors. They also do walkways at airports on the way into venues where they know they're going to get at least 100,000 footsteps going across either way, which does generate energy. It's brilliant. It's obviously not enough. But it's the beginning of hopefully what might be the future of thinking outside the box.
Exactly. I think a lot of things like those floors, they've got a long time until you'll see the money back and the environmental impact and benefit back, sometimes 10, 20 years.
Well, on their own website, they said between 10 and 15 years.
Okay. So there's often that you have to take into consideration. But these things are all a step in the right direction. Like, I don't think right now that London being littered with lime bikes and forest bikes is the end of the journey,
no.
I hope. But it is certainly a step in the right direction that more people are travelling sustainably around London. So that is something that I think is a real positive. But we have to look, even something like trying to be carbon neutral, which is quite a controversial thing. But to be carbon neutral is like, you do something bad and then you do something good and it outweighs it, is a interesting sort of thought in and of itself, whether doing something in inverted commas bad can be offset at all. And yes, it's a good thing to do, because some things you have to do to make this podcast. We couldn't have done it without recording it. We couldn't have done it without electricity. So therefore there are costs to it.
We could have done it, but nobody would hear it.
No, we would have had a great chat.
That's normally what we do in the office, isn't it?
Absolutely. This is just exactly that, but using loads more energy.
Yeah.
But the energy use is now in places where we don't see it so much. And so things like, I would love us to think about the word cloud and change it to what it actually is, which is server farms. And rather than thinking of it,
about digital,
the actual storage of data and the storage of all of this stuff, like the podcast itself, we could measure how much energy does this take to use for this, and it would seem like a very small amount, because it's just the energy plugged, turned on, this running, very low power consumption item. But actually, there's so much more to it. How many years is this going to be stored? What format is it stored in? What resolution? How much data? And that kind of thing is something that we often don't think about in the music industry.
Well, you don't see it, do you? And it's very easy to then not think about it.
Totally. Someone like Genelec is a really good company who we absolutely love here because of their sustainability credentials. So their products are 95% recycled aluminium, so the speakers are. They've also got a power shutdown mode. So after a little bit, their speakers go on standby, which saves an awful lot of energy because a lot of people leave their studio rig on, they'll go and do something else, they'll come back, and it's using a heck of a lot less power. They also use heat source for their energy to create in their factory. They've won countless awards for it as well, both in the UK and globally, even though they're a firm. I think they're in Iceland, aren't they? Finland? Iceland? Oh, somewhere not here.
Somewhere not here.
But they are, I'll say a few and then we can edit it.
Yeah, said like a true Brexiteer then.
Yeah, exactly. I 100% want to be in, 100% want to be out. As a Finnish company, they've got a factory. Their factory is sustainable and wins a lot of awards. As an Icelandic company, they've got a...
You can't do that.
And then you can edit it.
No, go for it. So what is, as an Icelandic company, what do you... No, it's lovely. Go,
Can we just look it
go.
up?
No, go.
No, okay. As an Icelandic company, are they Icelandic or Finnish?
I don't bloody know. You're the one who loves them.
Ah,
Look, we'll get the great Chris.
Chris, you can edit this bit. Oh, he's looking it up. We've got our researcher in the corner.
As a Mongolian company, they do...
Finnish.
No.
I'm going to go with Finnish.
I like this style, though. You threw me how naturally you were doing. I was like, I think he's lost his mind.
Finnish, great. Okay.
Finish.
Yeah, okay. That's a great case study. In fact, we had the last delivery of some speakers from them, and they were wrapped in polystyrene.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no, for such a sustainable company. So I wrote to them and I just said, and I think this is a really important thing to do as well, that, as you said, we're on a journey with this. Lots of things are nearly there, but not yet. And I think it's important then to make sure we don't then take the pressure off companies and make sure that they know that we are aware of the journey that they're on. So I wrote to Genelec and I said, why are they in polystyrene? Could you not do cardboard or something? And they said, sent a big report of all the tests they've done on transporting and the damage to units and the cost of replacing a unit and the air miles and transporting and
then resending it, presumably, as well.
Absolutely. And the wastage in a product that is now faulty and damaged. So all of that, compared to one polystyrene, that meant that such a high proportion of things arrived at their destination in good condition, meant that they have said, for the planet, for now, this is the best option. So they're on a journey. They're looking at how that can change in the future. But for now, that is the best option.
Well done for you as well for messaging them, because I think one of the most important things with this whole topic of sustainability is just open conversation as well, and just, not accusing people and saying, what's the story here? And I think that's really, really important. Talking of, you've reminded me of another thing that I did a bit of research on for this podcast was when you said about heating in buildings, which is, I'm just going to make sure I don't get it wrong, the name, it's in Scotland, in Glasgow, SWG3, which is an event space, really big building. And they've pioneered a new type of technology which takes body heat from the people within the event space. And they capture and harvest the body heat and then turn it back into the heating for the building. It was quite an expensive pilot. It's the first of its kind. It was part funded by the Scottish government as well, who've decided that this was worthwhile sort of trialling, which I think is quite brave to do. But yeah, I think it's something like 40, 50 metres. They've drilled down, and then, they basically have thought when people are dancing, exercising inside a building, the biggest thing that you produce as a human is body heat. So let's harness it and recycle it. I wonder about the smell. I'm sure there's a way of getting rid of the smell of 2,000 people dancing. But yeah, I think that's just absolutely incredible. And it'll be really interesting to see how that pans out over the next few years, and if we see more of it in the future.
Totally. I think we've come such a long way. And it's many years ago now, we won quite a lot of awards for sustainability as a studio, and pre-pandemic and pre the things that happened in my personal life, that meant that focusing on that kind of area, we just were focused on surviving, as a lot of businesses were during the pandemic and that era. prior to that, a lot of the things we were doing then have now thankfully become commonplace. So the things we won our awards for then, we wouldn't win for now, because we had to spend extra on things like having a smart meter fitted. They were so expensive at the beginning, and the technology wasn't there to mean that you could easily fit them in. You had to get 2 parts to it, and it was a real faff. Now everyone's got them, and they're fitted for you
for free. Yeah.
And so the world has changed, and we did a lot of work on our insulation, on our lights, on our energy, making sure we're sourcing from sustainable sources. In fact, we had a brilliant energy firm that were, again, based in Scotland. It was what reminded me. And they had a hydroelectric plant on a farm, and so they generated the energy there, sold it to the grid, and then we paid our energy through them. But that company now has sold on to another company. But the initiatives are happening in Britain, and it is really exciting to see change happening, particularly in the music industry.
Yeah, and I think it's, again, going back to what we said at the beginning, it's so important not to just judge immediately when something's being trialled or pioneered. There's the big talk about electric cars, which I don't want to really get into, but these huge arguments of how much is it costing, really, with the batteries, is it sustainable, blah, 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 and all this negativity immediately. It's like, but you have to let things grow and develop. You can't get it perfect immediately. I don't know, do you ever watch Rory Sutherland, the marketing genius guy? He does a lot of short videos. And I was watching him this morning, and he was talking about electric cars and when they first came about. And it was actually the early 1900s, 1903, when that technology was developing. And they lost out, like most things, the tech wars with anything, with music. It's not always the best product that wins. It's the one that was marketed best.
I think I did see this.
And he was talking about this, and the reason that electric cars really didn't take off was that they were branded as too feminine.
Yes, I did see it.
It's just amazing. And actually, the internal combustion engine, as this is his words, not mine. I wish it was my words, but I'm only saying what he said. The internal combustion engine was way too difficult. It's a lot more dangerous than the electric one. But it was, the electric one was a bit too feminine. But Henry Ford and their marketing, you had the big starter motor that was really a masculine, big beefy thing to get it going. And then he marketed through showing the Ford cars racing. So immediately all these men were, oh yeah, I want one of them. And that's the way that the market went. So the overall point I'm trying to make is for us not to judge things too quickly on how they're not working, and maybe for the world of marketing to think about, getting these sustainable products looking quite appealing, that the general market will want to go with it as well.
Absolutely. I think,
sadly, it's a part of it.
I think, and there's a great organisation at the moment called, their slogan is "No Music on a Dead Planet," and they're working really, really hard. So it's Music Declares Emergency, and their task is a tough one, but it's convincing people of these changes and the need to do these things, and positive PR around sustainability issues in music is really, really hard to push, because it's not always the popular option. It's more fun to have fireworks at the end of a gig than it is to have a drone with an LED on it. However more sustainable that is, I mean, I don't know for now, but it's probably on a journey towards being more sustainable than the firework going off, single use. But it's a hard one, because it's about the experience as well. And we're on this planet for such a short time. We don't want to just go through it and every experience be a little bit less exciting than it should have been. There is a balance in trying to work out, what does the sustainable journey mean for people in the entertainment sector, i.e. music? Where's the compromise?
Well, on the conversation of balance, we're halfway through our podcast. Let's take a break.
Passionate about podcasts and sound? Dive into the Sculpt Mixing course. Developed over 2 years, this online course delivers top-tier mixing tips straight from our bustling commercial studio. With guided videos, downloadable audio content, and a comprehensive handbook, you'll elevate your skills at your own pace. Visit crownlanestudio.co.uk/education and enter podcast special at checkout for an exclusive 30% discount. At Crown Lane, we help you sound better. Download now and let's get back to the episode.
Welcome back to our part 2 of our sustainability episode. We're going to be talking now something a bit closer to home about Crown Lane Studio and Metronome, our event space next door. John, you've gone on quite a journey with this. Just in case people don't know, we have 3 values. What are our 3 values here at Crown Lane, John?
Our 3 values, and they're not ever in any order, so they always get mixed up intentionally. Community, sustainability, and accessibility.
I think it's probably wise if we talk about the sustainability one for this episode. So, can you talk us through, John, what routes have you gone down to try and make these businesses, Crown Lane and Metronome, a sustainable one? Take it away.
Well, one big thing is if you don't celebrate something, then it generally doesn't happen. So we are celebrating the things like accessibility. On our journey with accessibility, celebrating it and making sure that we put effort in meant that we got a accessible hoist in the toilet, crowdfunded, which was thousands of pounds that we couldn't have afforded on our own, and there were no grants available to us. But by celebrating it, it happened. With sustainability, we've been on a really tough journey because prior to the pandemic, it was much easier to have that as a focus because the business ran well and we were able to just add that on as something that was like an add-on. And what this has taught us is that it's all right when everything's going well to do sustainability, but how do you keep remaining a sustainable business when time gets tough? And so during the pandemic, a lot of things got knocked down. We had one challenge that was in Metronome, as we opened, we didn't want to have any disposable cups. We wanted to start as the first coffee shop that had only a loan cup scheme. So if you haven't got a cup, it's fine. You pay a deposit and you get your cup. And then when you give it back, you get your deposit back. Brilliant. It works in a few places. There's one in Bristol. But the pandemic meant that you couldn't have disposable, so you could only use disposable. You couldn't even touch someone else's travel mug for that time. So that was when that business started. So a lot of our ideas got chucked away. And then we had to really think hard. The big thing is to think as a business, does this make financial sense? Yes, but does this make sense to the planet with every decision? So like our waste, we make sure we use a company called First Mile, who are brilliant. Called First Mile because it's all about us sorting it at this end rather than at that end, hoping it gets done later. So we have to spend a little bit extra effort here sorting things out, but it means that things are more likely to get recycled. So to buy less and make sure that our production routes are less and when we're buying things for here, things like our coffee comes from a B Corp, which is, whether you understand the world of sustainability or not, look out for the word B Corp for organisations. It's an amazing term that means, and I had to write these words down, performance, transparency and accountability. There's an accreditation and it's a really tough one. And it would be very expensive for us as a small business to do. It's something I'd look into for sure, but there are other things for small businesses that we'll come on to that work really well. But for us, what we're buying, our procurement routes, it's really important to look at the sustainability journey of those companies. So, as I said at the beginning, can you get rid of this in your garden in a few years' time, or can you reuse it, or can you sell it? It's that kind of thing when you're buying stuff. Are you buying it to last? Are you buying it not to? Because it's cheap. And sometimes the cheap option, unfortunately, tends to be the one that a lot of businesses go for. And during the pandemic, we got into a habit of changing how we procured things because we needed things quickly and we needed things to work on a budget. So we stopped shopping the way we had before. And part of changing the way we go back is to re-celebrate the things that we succeed in sustainability. And to do that, we are now appointing a sustainability champion that will be appointed tomorrow. So it's been open to all the team here, so anyone can apply. And we have a policy for sustainability, community and accessibility. And each one of those will then have a champion. So we've got the other two champions, but we don't have one for sustainability. And there's no surprise that sustainability drops off the map. And then with a churn of staff, when the staff member leaves, they come back, they don't realise that we don't have anything packaged in plastic unless it's absolutely necessary. So it's very hard to buy something in plastic in Metronome because of that. And those things, unless you're told about it and you learn about it, then you don't realise that they're actually an integral part of every decision we make. Our cups, the compostability of them, they're compostable at home, which is a tiny percentage of sustainable disposable cups are actually compostable at home. They often say compostable, but they have to be in a heat plant, of which nowhere in London actually has those. So if you have a disposable cup with that written on it and all looks nice and it's got it in nice green writing, it'll still just end up in landfill anyway and it will be burnt. So it's a tough journey, but it's really important to make sure that procurement lines are there and you celebrate all the successes. And we're doing that there really well. And things like we've got our coffee that once it's used, they're bagged up and they're left by the door and they go out and there's a local park that all the borders have gorgeous roses, a whole rose garden that is all growing in Metronome's coffee, and it's incredible.
When
to
I
see.
first came to Metronome, when I applied for the job at Crown Lane, I came in and saw the coffee bags. I was like, that's not a good sign. They've left all the coffee out. And then somebody educated me that
it is a bit strange.
Take it away. Right, okay, that's great.
But there are so many little stories of things like that to do with sustainability that are integral. But I'd say have somebody who's a champion, and if that's you, if it's a small business that you run, or if you're doing your own music industry and you are a performer, make sure you champion those things as well that are sustainable. If you're buying merch for your merch store, make sure that it's sustainable merch. This top that I've got on is made by a company called Rapa Nui down in Cornwall, and they make everything. They'll even take your garments back and recycle them after you've used them and turn them back into new garments. You can get whatever branding you want on them. They'll do short runs. They'll do 1, 2, 3. They'll do loads and loads if you want of loads of different garments. Rapa Nui, brilliant company, and their factory is sustainable as well. So things like the merch side of those 4 things is also worth looking
quartiles.
at. What is that? 4
quartiles.
things. 4 quartiles.
Quartiles.
That's what we called them. Are really important.
And the Crown Lane side of things, when we're talking about the studio, what efforts have you gone to there?
The studio's been a long journey in sustainability. The original things are things like making sure the energy suppliers are sustainable, and you're making sure that we switched all our aircon units to be more sustainable. That's a big expense, but there are grants out there and there is funding. So definitely check local chambers and local councils for local initiatives that mean you can do those kind of integral things that are at the beginning, that mean that we've got those things sorted. So as a business, we made sure we sorted out those, and our procurement chains, as in how we buy things, always sustainable. One little trick that we do is making sure that things last as long as possible. And one way you can do that is before you buy something, and everything big in the studio, I've done this for, you phone the after sales support from the company. So at Studio Spares,
I love this.
I used to know the guy there on after sales.
I love this.
And I just phone him up and I just say, yeah, I've got the whatever item it is. I just wondering, is this common that this would fail on it? And you can find out so much about
So let me just get this straight. Before you buy the item, you pretend that you've already bought it, speak to the company
about the thing that I'm concerned about.
And then they will tell you the truth.
Absolutely.
I mean, that is the best.
And then right, I'm not going to go for that one, I'm going to go for this one instead.
Yeah.
So after sales first, I would definitely recommend, because an item that's going to last 5 years rather than 3 years or 10 years is really important. And the trouble is with things like fast fashion and technology, the speed it moves, it's really hard to think long term with things. It's far easier to think, let's get the thing that's only £1,000 rather than £10,000, because probably technology will have improved or whatever in that time. So it's a very hard balance trying to get those things right.
Yeah, I think from what you were saying as well before, I think it's very important when you said about independent artists, even if you can't make these sustainable changes, if you maybe financially are not in the position to do it, it's really good to be your own champion and at least think about it and challenge yourself on it and think, well, maybe I might be able to do it next year, and put a date in your diary to think about it again next year, and just keep it on your mind, even if you can't be in a position to do it.
Absolutely.
Because technology and these sustainability changes so dramatically and rapidly that in 3 months' time there might be a much better solution to your problem that is achievable for you. So just make sure it's at the top of your mind, I guess.
Totally. And I think here we're in a really good position that by tomorrow, as it happens, we will have a sustainability champion.
It's very
here.
well timed.
Absolutely.
This, isn't it?
And that person then will be able to spearhead and help us make decisions. And the policy we've got on that isn't just about doing stuff. It's about awareness as well, and making sure it stays front of mind, these kind of things. And there's some brilliant organisations that I would love to recommend as we talk now, really, that are useful when you work in music or you're a performer or you're an artist. There are places that have got some really good advice for the here and now to do straight away. Can I dive in with them?
Would you like to?
I'd really love to.
We're not going to cut this. Come on. Let's carry on.
Okay, well, Julie's Bicycle.
I'd like to recommend this and then nothing. Shall I recommend them? Yes, I think it's a good idea. Let's go for it.
So there's a company called Julie's Bicycle.
Chris, don't edit that out, by the way. Carry on.
Julie's Bicycle are one of the greatest organisations for sustainability in music, and they have some really good tools on their website. They have pointers if you're a musician, artist, touring, whatever, in the arts and cultural sector. They their support is really, really good. And I'd recommend going on Julie's Bicycle website. Music Declares Emergency, as I mentioned, make sure you go on those and look at other places that are in your genre or in your sphere. And don't be afraid of thinking, oh, they're doing so well. Finally, I've got someone I can look to and I want to be like them. So a studio for me that I look to all the time is The Premises in Hackney. So they've got solar panels on the roof and they do everything they can to be as sustainable as possible. In fact, the floor here, when we got rubber delivered and we got all our insulation here because the floor is totally isolated from everywhere else, that was a big process. As soon as I'd finished it, I went and looked at The Premises one, and their floating floor was created using... He hired a one of those things you put old Christmas trees through at the end of season, and he put tractor tires through it. And got rubber chipped up into tiny little pieces, and he used that as the floating floor there.
Amazing!
So there's loads of, I think that's the correct story. But there's amazing things that you can do by looking at other people, because you can learn from where they have gone, that's how they've done it. I think he got his window from somewhere as well, and loads of it is recycled. And then when you start off on that journey, it means you can then keep going, yes, that's where we started. Let's keep going on that route. And The Premises is a brilliant studio for that. There's also your local council and your local chamber of commerce, because on a local level, as an artist, if you wanted to put on a festival or you wanted to do something locally, everyone always goes to their council and goes, can I have some money to do this, or can I have some funding for this? If you look at sustainability and say, I would like to do this and I'd like to do it more sustainably, there are far more funding streams that you can access for exactly the same thing that you wanted to do anyway, just making better choices for the planet in the process. So definitely approach your local chamber. In fact, our sustainability champion, who will be appointed tomorrow,
good timing.
We have through seeing an email in the local Merton Chamber of Commerce newsletter, we have a mentor and guide who's going to help that person on the sustainability journey and give us a carbon tracker to be able to monitor both businesses and our energy usage. So I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't looked on the local council and seen what the local chamber are providing.
Lovely. We're going to move on to our little tips and tricks section. What can you do from home to do with sustainability? I'm going to bring it back. I'm going to speak again about the online storage and data storage, because again, you just don't think about it. You upload your stuff, it's there, 7 gig, no problem. But actually, it's a whole world within itself. Is there anything that we can be thinking about, John, to be more sustainable with that?
Totally. I think moving from this pretty term of cloud storage to thinking in our heads as of server farm, and that term being the term that we use more in our everyday, are we willing to put this on a server farm somewhere else? And the amount of energy that's now being used, particularly by AI, as it is growing exponentially, is unfathomable. In fact, over the next few years, they think it will reach about 2.5 of total carbon emissions will be from the storage of data for AI, which, just to give some comparison, that 2.5 is exactly the same as the whole aviation industry.
Wow.
So in terms of us at home, as you say, with data, it is easy just to think, let's keep storing it. Clean it out. Choose if you're doing film work, get your rushes. Are we ever going to use these again? No, go. Here we keep everything for 2 years for each client, and then we ditch it other than the main mixes, unless the client wants it, and then we give it to them. We use WeTransfer, which is brilliant because it stores everything for 1 year. So we can transfer huge amounts of data, but actually in a year's time, that data will be gone. So that's not storing indefinitely. So if you've got Google Drives and things like that, and the business model of storing on iCloud and Google is that actually they want you to spend more money with them to keep, rather than them saying, time to delete loads of stuff, although they do give a little easy way to do that. Their main aim is to earn more money. So they want more money from you to store more. We need to buck that trend and say, right, we're going to try and store less.
And it's just so easy. And if we take it down a scale to things like even like your smartphone and the amount of photos and videos that you got on there, which beautiful, amazing, treasured memories. But when I go through them on my one, it'll say your iPhone's full. I'll put them all across. And then there's just so much that is not necessary, or where you've gone to take a photo and you've got 30 and 29 of them are rubbish, but I'm keeping the 29, which you never would have done before. So yeah, just being a little bit more vigilant with all of your media, and is this really necessary to keep? Great. Well, let's move on to our recommendations. Are you burnt through your recommendations?
No, well, I mean,
have you got any other recommendations? Normally, it would be just anything in particular from the minds of John, or Lawrence, or Chris.
So, yeah, I have.
You do, and would you like to talk about them now? Is the next question.
Let me have a think.
I'm going to remember that for a long time. Do you have anything to recommend for our listeners?
I do, and it's so silly, but start small. Don't try and think we're going to become the greenest, most sustainable band on the planet. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. Just do the things that you think you can do. So what is the one thing now, and I am going to just leave a little pause, what is the one thing that you can do that will make a change?
Awkward. Nice. Okay. Well, thanks for that. I'm going to recommend the Carshalton Eco Fair if you're in South London, thinking about all things sustainability. Have you ever been?
Yeah, I have. We've got a few bands playing there this year.
Oh, really? Oh, well, our Crown Lane studio rehearsal bands. Absolutely. So that's fantastic. Although by the time this has gone out, it would have passed. But come along next year if you haven't been before. It's really, really good. And my other recommendation, again, local venue. This isn't necessarily to do with sustainability, but the Nightingale, I wanted to shout them out in Sutton. They're a really, really amazing music venue. They have a minimum of 2 gigs a week. And yeah, really, really great place.
Oh, I've got one final recommendation.
Oh.
Am I allowed?
Of course you are.
Can you ask me?
Well, you've got your recommendation, tick. Would you, you'd like to say it?
Yeah, because quite a few teachers, music teachers, listen to this.
Yes.
And there's a brilliant organisation called Music Mark, who work with a lot of education organisations. And they have something called This Is Not a Rehearsal. And it's all the things that in the music education world you can do. And it's definitely more for teachers, but they've got some brilliant resources on their website, and they've got a few events coming up as well.
Great. Well, thank you very much, John. Thank you very much, Chris, for engineering this session. We will be back next month. We're going to be talking about what it looks like to A, record for a day in a studio, but more importantly, B, what it's like to record at Crown Lane Studio.
Because it's pretty special.
It's very, very, very special. So we'll be talking about that next time. Otherwise, be sustainable, folks. Take care. Thank you very much. Goodbye.